Sorry about that interruption. I was in the middle of Caitlin's answer. Um, I do not really think all of these will come true. The world is too different and too big. It will nearly be impossible to make all the nations equal, as to some don't have the same resources and health that others do. Also, it will be impossible for the human race to be perfect. There will always be flaws in the human race. Um, but the fact that Condorcet really did think that the human race could become perfect just shows you really how ambitious the French Revolution was. It wasn't about just setting up a new government. It was about changing human nature in many ways. And there was this endless and boundless optimism for the future. All right, moving on to group three. Immanuel Kant, his very famous essay called What is Enlightenment? And he talks about how human beings have been in a state of nonage, that is, a state like children, not being able or not being willing to make their own decisions and to think for themselves. Ernest, you had a very good description here of Kant's argument. When Kant says that enlightenment means man's emergence from his self-imposed knowledge, and that he must dare to know, he is trying to explain how the man has to get out of the knowledge stage. Generation after generation, men have been divided between the guardians and servers, or what we know as the power chain. For example, we follow rules from the government, and we all have to obey in order to not get in trouble. What Kant wants to say is that in the way of control, this is insulating us from making our decisions. What Kant tries to explain is that in order to be a non-dependent person and to be able to not be the herd of sheep, we should be free, without laws, stereotypes, or any other thing that would condition the thinking and actions of a person. He explains that people are so okay with following rules that they forget the meaning of it and don't even dare to know. Great post. So this is, in a way, the dream of the Enlightenment, to get people to stop acting like sheeple, just following the leaders, following their government officials, following religious leaders or their teachers or professors, and dare to know, dare to think for themselves, to use their own minds to make a better society. And in order for this to happen, there's one condition necessary, and the answer posted by Chair Brandiona Roberts brought this out nicely. The one factor necessary for promoting enlightenment is freedom. Freedom has a wide range of meanings, such as freedom of religion and salvation. The most innocent way to live out freedom is to be free in what you believe and live by it, not to be led by others and live in cowardice and laziness. And it's an interesting question, even so many years after the Enlightenment. Has this message of Kant's really sunk in? Do we really dare to know and dare to think for ourselves, or are we too cowardly and lazy sometimes to accept the consequences of doing that? But Kant thought that this freedom had limits. And he thought that sometimes it was necessary for rulers to put some limits on freedom, because too much freedom could have unexpected and negative consequences. And D'Amber, you summarized this very nicely, I thought. When Kant says allowing society to have too much freedom is dangerous, I believe he has a good point. Society needs a balance. Because of this balance of rules and freedom, the amount of chaos is at a minimum. I believe that he was thinking in terms of those who you give an inch and they take a mile. And so, as you put it so nicely, this balance between rules and freedom, Kant thought, was essential. Because if you had too much freedom too fast in your society, you might end up with the French Revolution, where things really did degenerate into chaos and where you wound up with another dictator as a result. And so he agreed with Frederick the Great's approach to allow more freedom, but not unlimited freedom in his home state of Prussia. Ramona, you had a very thought-provoking, provocative post, really kind of running with this question. You said, I find myself really struggling on this answer. While trying to keep my perspective focused on the document provided, I can't help compare the time of the French Revolution to our current time in society. I look around and see that while we believe we have freedom here in the U.S., I can also see where we have so much diversion provided to us that keeps us from progressing, becoming enlightened, if you will. If you compare the two, there really isn't that much difference, in my opinion. All of the protesting over the current presidency and people being disillusioned by a corrupt government reminds me of the civil unrest prior to the French Revolution. I've always heard that history repeats itself. If this is true, are we looking at another revolution? Very provocative. I wish everyone else had picked up on this and really dealt with it, because these are important questions, and these readings do bring up a lot of vital questions about today's society and government. All right. Second document for Group 3 were some laws passed by the National Convention during the wars of the French Revolution, in which France is fighting other European powers. And these laws really, for the first time, unlocked the massive potential of the people in a modern democratic state. In these wars, not just young men were mobilized, but everybody was mobilized. As the group's answer had it, women were responsible for making tents and clothing, as well as working in the hospitals. Children turned old linens into lint, while the elderly did repairs, and promoted unity and courage as rhetoric to keep the nation encouraged. And I asked them what they thought of this. Should governments have the power to force everybody to work for a war effort? And the group's answer was everyone should pitch in to try to help the best they can, but nations should not have unlimited power in making them do so. And similarly, the second law they looked at was a law in which people were encouraged to turn in their neighbors if they suspected them of treason against the French revolutionary state. And these people were put on trial and punished, really whether or not they were actual traitors. So this was part of the terror period in French revolutionary history, where many people were unjustly accused of treason and sent to the guillotine for this. And I asked the group if they would want to live in a society like this. They said no one, in the answer Brandiano posted, no one would like to live in a society under these type of conditions due to prejudgment based on your opinion to agree or disagree with their beliefs. The Bill of Rights allows us a certain degree of freedom, which allows us to live comfortably with the decisions that we make. These provisions are very dangerous to people's rights, because people should be able to make life-altering decisions on their own, such as joining the armed forces. So you see here two sides of the age of revolutions. On the one side, liberation and empowerment for the people, sweeping away corrupt regimes that had oppressed the people for many years. On the other hand, there was always the danger of creating a new kind of tyrant, and perhaps an even more terrifying tyrant, more terrifying because the vast resources and power of the people could be mobilized for tyranny. And this is a dilemma that has really had very massive consequences, as we'll see when we talk about Nazism, a popularly elected regime in Germany, in which the German people were mobilized in behalf of a tyranny. This can happen in a modern democratic state as well. So it's good to keep that in mind as we move forward in the course. All right, good job, chairs, good job, groups. Looking forward to your discussions in this module. Thanks.